up, y'all? Welcome to another edition of The Lion's Den. Y'all ever seen that movie Transformers? Man, I think it's cool how them things can just change from one thing to the other in a matter of a couple seconds. One moment, they're a big giant fighting robot, and the next moment, they're an automobile. Sometimes I wish I can be like a Transformer, and in no time at all, change into something else. I think that's pretty cool. You know, the Bible tells us that we need to be transformed. In the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 22, tells us not to be conformed to this world any longer, but to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. There's areas in our lives that we need to transform, but in order to transform, it needs to start right here, in our minds. If there's ever going to be any change in our lives, it must first start in the mind. Did you know that change is the evidence of life? Anything that has life should be growing, and in the process of it growing, there's change. So if you ain't changing, you ain't growing. I'll be the first one to admit there's some areas in my life that I need to change, that I need to transform. And that transformation needs to take place in my mind. Do you got some areas in your life that you need to change? Do you need to transform your mind? So the question is, why do we need to change? Why do we need to transform our mind, our way of thinking? The scripture goes on to tell us so that we can be able to prove what is that good, acceptable, and that perfect will of God. One of the areas we need to change our thinking about is our current situation. So often we think that our situation is worse than anybody else's. We think our life is just bad. Why is everything always happening to me? Why can't I ever get a break? Why don't good things happen to me? Well, you need to think about your life, because the reality is it could be worse. For example, go out and do something stupid and get yourself in prison. I bet you after spending some time in prison, you will realize that your life was pretty good. See, nobody likes living in prison. Or how about this? Try go living in Syria, over there with ISIS, where they're cutting folks' heads off just for being a Christian. If you go over there and see some of the stuff that's going on over there, I guarantee you'll think your life was pretty good. So while we thinking that we got it bad, in reality, it's not as bad as you really think. You got it kind of good, you know? So we need to change the way we think about our current lives, our current situations. We need to transform the way we think. And the reason that we need to do that so we can prove what is good, acceptable, and perfect in the will of God. So that was a time when my life was messed up, a wretch, undone, good for nothing, on my way to hell. Then God saw fit to get my attention. And when I started paying attention to him, he showed me that my life really wasn't that bad. And in fact, to him, it was acceptable. He saw something in me that he could use. And I found myself being in the acceptable will of God. But you see, God is not satisfied with us staying in the acceptable will. He wants us to move to the good will. And when I gave my life to Christ, I gave him permission to show me how to get into his good will. And he brought me up to a place where now I can say that I'm living proof of the good will of God. But I'm not satisfied in staying in the good will of God. I want to find myself in the perfect will of God. You see, that's my goal. That's what I'm striving for. And as I continue to depend on him, he'll bring me to that perfect will one day. But you see, in order to get to that place, in order to get to the good and the perfect will of God, we need to transform the way we think about ourselves, about our lives. We need to be appreciative and be thankful that it's not as bad as we think. It's actually pretty good. So today I challenge you, change the way you think about your life, your current situation. Transform your mind so that you can be able to prove what is that good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. Hey guys, thank y'all for tuning in to another edition of The Lion's Den. And as always, love yourself and I'll love you too.